Thank you for tuning in to the Victory is Greater Than the Struggle, an ex-lesbian podcast with myself, your host, Jessica Newsom. Okay, I just woke up. I threw on this hoodie, and I was just like, I got to share this message. God spoke to me in a dream last night, and it was just so strong and it was so powerful. And I said, okay, before I do anything today, I need to get up and go ahead and create this video and share with you guys. So let's go to 2 Corinthians 11, verse 1. And we're going to skip around a little bit so you can just really get what I'm trying to say. So we'll start at verse 1. And this is Paul talking to the people. Will you put up with a little foolishness aside from me? Please, just for a moment. The thing that has me so upset is that I care about you so much. This is the passion of God burning inside me. I promised your hand in marriage to Christ, presented you as a pure virgin to her husband, and now I am afraid that exactly as the snake seduced Eve with his smooth patter, you are being lured away from the simple purity of your love for Christ. It seems that if someone shows up preaching quite another Jesus than we preached, different spirit, different message, you put up with him quite nicely. But if you put up with these big shot apostles, why can't you put up with simple me? And we're going to verse 12. And I'm not changing my position on this. I die before taking your money. I'm giving nobody grounds for lumping me in with those money-grubbing preachers, vaunting themselves as something special. They're a sorry bunch, pseudo-apostles, lying preachers, crooked workers, posing as Christ agents, but a sham to the core. And no wonder. Satan does it all the time, dressing up as a beautiful angel of light. So it shouldn't surprise us when his servants masquerade as servants of God, but they're not getting by with anything. They'll pay for it in the end. I wanted to talk to you guys about that slow compromise. What it looks when it comes down to that slow walk away from Christ Jesus, that slow walk away from the values that once were instilled in you, when we begin to just say, okay, well, let me try to figure out that balance. Let me try to figure out a balance between being in this world and not being of it. Let me try to figure that out, because there's something on the inside of us that isn't happy, that isn't fully okay with being that full-on burning person for Christ Jesus, that full-on, I am going to live in light, I am not going to sin, I'm not going to waver on my values as a Christian, right? There's something inside of us that begins to, at some point in time, that begins to just say, okay, well, let me waver a little bit on this. Maybe I'm too Christian in this area. Maybe I'm being a little hyper spiritual, right? And so we begin to make these excuses as to why it's okay to drink a little bit when God told you no. When it's okay to maybe go to the club a little bit when you know that's not where you need to be. Develop these relationships with people who will tear you away from God, who are bringing you closer to that person who you used to be. And you're walking away from that person who you used to be. You're trying to get closer to Christ, but it seems like you're being pulled back to that old you. And the enemy is so sneaky at trying to get you to go back to that old you. It's just trying to, he will say, you know what? Just like he did Eve. Well, did God really say not to eat of that fruit? Did he really say not to? Because really, you'll be just like him. And isn't that the whole goal? To be more like God? To be one with him? And so what the enemy did was he shifted. He just replaced a little word here. He just shifted the sentence there so that humans begin to just waver a little bit and begin to say, well, you know what? Maybe it's okay, where God said, no, hold up, we don't go that route. So let's take it to our personal lives right now, okay? Maybe you are walking out of homosexuality and you're on that path and you're just trying your best to be your best to you. You are trying to walk this out and you have let go of so many things. You have let go of old friends. You have let go of going to the club. You've let go of smoking, of drinking. You basically, sometimes you just feel like a nun. You feel like you're in a convent because you don't do too much of anything except for work and church. And so you're trying to figure out this balance where it's like, man, I just don't feel normal. I don't feel like a regular person anymore, right? And so maybe God has uprooted you out of your comfort zone of being that closed off a Christian, where he basically had you in a place where you were growing and you were getting all of that knowledge, right? I just moved from Texas to Charlotte, and I was in this bubble when I was in Texas. I was in this bubble where I was learning and growing and gleaning, right? And it was as if God had me in this bubble to where the enemy didn't have that reign as he once did in my life, because God sheltered me to a degree, and so God's like, okay, well, we're going to take you out of that. We're going to put you in a new environment. Now you really have to apply all of these things that I've been teaching you. And it can get so difficult in this life where it's like, okay, I'm not in that bubble anymore. I'm not around those God-fearing people anymore. I'm in this new place. And now you have to what? Make new friends. You have to build new relationships, right? And now you have this choice. You have this choice to make the old kind of relationships or make new kind of relationships that will edify you and bring you closer to God. And it may not be easy. It may not happen the way you want it to happen. It may not happen as quickly as you want it to happen. But these things are your choices. So my question to you is, are you going to compromise in your faith and just add a little bit of old you to the mix? Or are you going to stand firm even though it's tough, even though it's difficult, even though it's not popular, even though it's not fun, and you're going to stand on that ground that is not sinking ground, that rock which is Jesus Christ, that Bible which you have been standing on for a long time? What choices are you going to make in life? Are you going to compromise? Now, I get that there's times when we're trying to figure it out and we may fall a little bit here. We may make the wrong decision. And when we do, it's okay. It's okay. Sometimes we get ourselves in spots where we're just like, okay, you know what? That was not the right decision. And God will just check us and he'll just be like, you know what? You see now that you can't compromise in that area. You see it now. So what I need for you to do, baby girl, what I need for you to do, my son, is I need for you to make that readjustment and come back in line, come back under the authority and the wisdom and the hand of Christ Jesus. So don't beat yourself up about your mistakes. Don't beat yourself up. Don't condemn yourself for those things that you may have done, those choices that you may have made that begin to guide you out of the will of God. But just readjust. What you don't want to do is to begin to make a pattern of these things and then add more things to the mix that leads you away from God. So it starts with one little compromise. And then you keep compromising in that area, and then you add another compromise and another compromise. Next thing you know, you are so out of the will of God for your life. And you look back and you just go, wow, I'm starting to look like the old me. The new me, that woman of God, that man of God, that person that was on fire and sold out for Christ, I don't look like that person anymore. You don't want to get to a place to where you are so far out of the will of God. Because oftentimes coming back can be very, very difficult. More difficult than the time we came to God in the first place. You remember that time coming to God and beginning to shed that old you and that old mindset, and you're putting on that knowledge of God, that wisdom of God, and you're changing your inner circles, and you're renewing your mind. You're doing all that stuff. You remember how difficult that was. Now, imagine it way more difficult than that, because we walked away and we're coming back. It can be so much more difficult doing it again that second time. So save yourself, spare yourself all of that extra heartache. Spare yourself all of that extra just confusion and pain of getting out of that sin that so easily entangled you in the first place. When you notice in your life areas that you have strayed away, even just a little bit, let's begin to man up, woman up, and quickly make that adjustment and not walk down that path that will tear us apart. The enemy is so good at getting us to compromise just a little bit and then compounding on that, adding on that, adding on that, adding on that, till the next thing you know, you can't recognize you can't recognize the woman of God who you used to be. And you're starting to recognize that old you. So we can't compromise. Maybe you feel like a nun. Maybe you feel like you're in a convent. Maybe you feel like you're hyper Christian, too Christian for people. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you feel like this is a bit much, but you know what? That's what the enemy tries to tell you. That you're being too Christian. That you need to relax a little bit. Have a little bit of fun, right? There is nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong with being sold out for Christ Jesus. Nothing. There is nothing wrong with keeping away from sin and guarding yourself from the things that you know will tear you down and will pull you back to that old lifestyle, that old mindset. Continue to walk that path that God has for you. Continue to say, you know what? I'm going to stand on the word of Christ and not compromise my values, my beliefs, who I am, my integrity. I'm not going to compromise those things because I want to have a little fun, because I want to be quote unquote normal like other people. If God says to you, that something is sin, that you shouldn't do a thing, even though maybe in the Bible it's okay, but if he tells you that something is not okay, then you have to follow the direction of God in your life. The biggest example I have for that is, drinking. It's not a sin to drink according to the Bible. It's a sin to get drunk. But if God tells you that it is not okay, then it's not okay. Why? Because oftentimes opening one door, cracking one door open, will lead us to crack another door open and another door open. And we think that because it's just cracked a little bit that it won't hurt us. Next thing you know, those doors aren't cracked. They're open, wide open. And we're just letting things in. We are letting things in that will tear us apart. We're letting things in that will remove ourselves from under the hand of God, the protection of God. And we begin to just pull away from God, pull away from the church, pull away from going to Bible study and all of those things, and just going back to that old person. So I encourage you. Do not compromise on your belief systems. Stand strong, stand firm, and keep pushing. Thank you for tuning in to The Victory is Greater Than the Struggle, an ex-lesbian podcast with myself, your host, Jessica Newsom. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. Please, if you're checking us out on YouTube, share. If you are checking us out on the podcast, please rate and review. I would definitely appreciate it. If you would like to give to this ministry, I would encourage you to go to our website, www.loveatthecross.com. You can donate there, and you can check out just more about what we do. I love you guys, and thank you for tuning in. See you next time.